I can't believe as a kid that like all these things that we used to read in books and comic books are now on the screens, big screens.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, guys. Thank you so much for listening in. Today, I'm really excited to introduce the DM that we have today who builds some really fantastic terrain. You sent me some really cool pictures. Thanks for being here, Rod.
Not a problem. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. So first question first, how long have you been playing and DMing?
Well, I used to play in the mid 80s. Quite a bit. I did my friends in that in the earlier editions. And then when I left home and went to the big city, I started playing Vampire the Masquerade. Actually, that's what I played for the 90s. And been out of gaming for a while, but the kids were interested in trying out D&D, and I warned them. I said, Dad can get pretty obsessive about this kind of stuff. Go there. And I said, yeah. And so, yeah, that was about 3 years ago. And so now I'm DMing 3 different campaigns, 2 kids groups, 1 adult group, and I'm playing in 2 other games. And I've had several players start their own games as well. So that's a big success. That's what I like seeing.
How do you balance between like a kid game and an adult game?
You mean the balances in time or?
I mean, all of it. Like what makes the difference between a kid game and an adult game?
Well, for me, the kid game is, I've got 3 kids. One's 10, 12, and 14. So the 12 and 14-year-old playing the game with a couple of their friends. And my 10-year-old plays in a game with a couple of my adult players who also have kids that are 10 years old, 10 and 9. So it's more the balance is the content I deliver and the stories we tell. Just more age appropriate. So with the youngest kids, it's ridiculous. Some of the things that I throw at them, and even crazier is the solutions and how they handle things, which I'd never think of as a player to do. But the 12 to 14, it's a very silly PG-13, still a campaign in fantasy world, but we have a lot of fun with that one. And like they encounter like were squirrels, giant squirrels, different things, a lot more mimics and things like that get thrown at them. So it's all good. It's all good fun, but it's different from the adult game that I DM, where it's a pirate ship based adventure. It's all they've never even seen a dungeon. It's all more of an adult themes. Nothing crazy, mind you, not like, but it's more, yeah, they encounter a little bit more deadly scenarios, and I throw a lot more of big scenarios at them, and a lot more plot hooks, a lot more in-depth story in that one. That's the biggest thing, is you got to target the adventure towards the age groups, and keep them all active. The smallest age group, or the youngest, I also cap that at like a 2-hour game max, just because I find after that their attention span wanes no matter what you do. So I keep that one shorter. The 12 and 14-year-old, it's a 4-hour game, but I break it up into 2-hour chunks. So that seems to work the best so far. In the adult game, we just go till everybody drops. So
yeah, I have a 6-year-old, and we just started playing with him.
Okay, nice.
And it's really cool. Like, kids are so creative in their solutions.
Yeah, it's sometimes I have no idea how they're going to handle things, and they always surprise me. We had a fire elemental, and they threw the body of a giant toad at it that they had previously tackled to kind of smother the flame. But so I had to break up into smaller fire elementals, and then my daughter came up with the idea, because they didn't have any way to hurt the fire elemental. So they decided, what if we pee on it? I was like, well, I pulled the Mercer, and I said, well, you can certainly try.
You can certainly try.
That's a ranged weapon. I'm not giving you dexterity or proficiency bonus on that one, but go ahead and roll. So.
That's adorable.
Yeah, so, they're pretty proud of that. Then they use the snot from the mushroom creature to slide out of a collapsing castle. So yeah, they come up with some pretty clever ideas how they're going to get out of situations. And it's rarely combat orientated. So it's like rarely do they think to kill the monster. They just deal with it in imaginative ways. Yeah.
They just do. It's so sweet. I love it. Oh.
Yeah, they did a scenario where I had them go into the sewers to because they're orphans in a village and they're like proving their worth, and they had to. So they did some. They got caught sneaking out, so they got punished by having to go into the sewers to clean it out because it was all plugged up, and they discovered that it was a poop golem that was causing all the problems. So they had to literally flush it out. So they figured out a way to divert a lake into the sewers to flush out the poop golems and stuff. So it was pretty cool.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was fun. And then I build terrain for all of that and monsters. And that's what kind of gets the kids. They like seeing all the inventive monsters that I build for them.
So where do you draw your inspiration from?
Oh, for the stories? I kind of wait till I have a good idea for the youngest kids, because I really want. We don't play that. We play that one about every 2 months. So I don't just force an idea. I wait till I got a good one coming up, and then I say, okay, I got an idea for a game, and then we throw it together. So the next one is going to be a heist game based on Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Actually.
Oh my gosh, I love Brooklyn Nine-Nine so much. It's like you're going to do like the Halloween heist.
Yeah, and I'm going to have the kids, and they're going to have to wear like New Orleans masks, and because they're going to go to a Halloween ball, and then they have to pull off a heist without getting caught. So I'm building a big tower with multi-levels that the characters can all go through to wander through. So that one's a little bit bigger build, but it should be fun for them. But that's, again, it's a quick adventure. It's only about 2 hours. So their timing is pretty fast.
That's adorable, though. I've never thought to take Brooklyn Nine-Nine and make that one into this ingenious. It's ingenious.
Well, we all watch the Brooklyn Nine-Nine here. We've watched, I think, twice or 3 times this season. So the heist is pretty good. And I was trying to figure out a way to do a community paintball challenge, like the paintball in there, but this one's a little more easier to adapt.
So do you build all of your maps? Like, do you do them with the terrain building?
Yeah, I do. There's Black Magic Crafts was inspiration. He's the grandfather of terrain building because he's cheap, easy, and plays into my skills that I have. So I follow a lot of his tutorials and others.
With your terrain building, do you feel like you're still just as descriptive, or since it's there and the visual is there, you don't necessarily have to be?
Well, I approach it, the DMing, as being a radio show. The visuals help, but I do describe all the sounds, the smells, and everything else. And the terrain isn't always 100% to what the adventure is. So yeah, it's very descriptive.
Okay.
It gives the players a sense of space for spells and ranged weapons more than anything. I've got a mat with a dry erase on it that I'll draw dungeons out on occasionally too, or other things. And that's where all the terrain goes on top of that. So it has the grid on the mat, so you can tell scale without having to have a grid on the terrain.
I'm yet to use any kind of like 3D map or terrain building for any of my stuff.
Yeah, but the other challenge we had recently was an underwater, the adult game, the pirates. They got to the elemental plane of water, and we're in a kelp temple hundreds of feet below the water. So we had to do up as well because they could swim at any depth. So that was a challenge too, to do that within the environment. So that one took a lot more imagination because I wasn't about to build a big giant ball of kelp for the whole temple. There's individual rooms, and they had to use and we did markers underneath each miniature to lift them up to mark how the depth.
I think that the terrain building is fantastic, and I always admire looking at other people's maps when they do those. I think that it helps bring like a whole new level to the game
It
when
does.
you it makes it feel much more real and there.
Yeah.
At least I imagine it being that way.
Yeah, it kind of brings you into the environment a little bit more is what it does. So it's, but it's still a lot of theater of the mind because you can't build everything. And a lot of my pieces I build using like modularity, so I can use them a couple times. And then the big room at the end or big events, I build the pirate campaign. These guys keep switching boats, so I built 5 different boats for them already. So I think I'm gonna put a stop to that kind of activity. That's a better boat. We're gonna take it. It's like, oh.
Oh man, that would doesn't that I spent a few weeks ago in my campaign. I was like, all right, we're gonna go here, I'm gonna make all the maps, it'll be great. And I had like a month beforehand to do my maps, but I've said it once, I'll say it 100 times, it's my least favorite part of D&D is making maps. I hate drawing maps.
See, I'm such a tech artist guy that I love doing the maps, but I'll build a huge map thing, figure out it's not working, pitch it, start over, and then I'll ink it, and then it's, oh, I need this digital, and so I get carried away when it comes to the maps. So I really have to watch myself. I'm much better off just doing a loose drawing of a map and number the rooms and do more writing, and then let the terrain handle the map. We used to have like hex paper and a grid paper for map making growing up, but now with the terrain I build, the guys aren't even map building. They're not writing, they're not drawing the maps, so they just know which rooms because of what was in it.
Yeah, that's easier.
It's really easier for them.
Yeah. I use wrapping paper because on the back of wrapping paper is that grid. So that's usually how I do mine and I have like a dry erase one that I'll use for one shots, and then I use the paper so that if they need to return.
Yeah. See, I couldn't find any dry erase ones that were, because I know I work with printers. I actually got I made some artwork that fit my table exactly and got it printed with dry erase on it. So that worked out better because I was doing the wrapping paper, but I ran out of the roll and I couldn't find any more with the grid on the back. So I had to come up with a little bit more permanent solution if I was doing like 4 games a month. So
yeah, I also cheat on mine. It's not really cheating. It's so I'm running Curse of Strahd.
okay.
And so I take a picture of the map in the book, and then I like use like the editing on my phone to where I can circle the room. Right. And then I put that picture next to my notes in my computer, so that way I can see where they are on the map and then see where they are on the map on my computer, and I can make sure I'm describing the right room, because I definitely had that issue the first like couple sessions where I was describing the wrong room.
See, that's not cheating, that's clever.
Yeah, work smarter, not harder, right? Although it is a lot more work in the beginning to do all of that.
Well, I for the pirate guys, I've drawn a lot from the Salt Marsh campaign. Until they torched the town, but then kind of it went astray with the pirate thing. But I built out the whole mansion, each level of it, and that was they didn't have to map it because it's stacked, so they could go down different levels. And then when they finally got into the dungeon part of it, the whole mansion came off, and I had the whole dungeon part for them to wander through. So that worked out well.
With them playing pirates, did they kind of tend to go a little bit more chaotic-y?
Yeah, that one there was a couple brand new players when we started that one, so they're still in the chaotic good range, neutral good. Yeah, that one's got a lot of challenges because they tend to burn through crew pretty good, so they've had to up their hiring rates and go to different towns and get away from their reputation to go find crew to work with them. So
Consequences.
Yeah. Yeah.
Between the kids and the adults games, do they still get the same kind of attachment to their players? Or I'm sorry, to their characters?
Yeah, the youngest one I made characters for them because I want to skip over that at the start.
Mhm.
But they're ready now to make their own players and play a little bit more. I really streamlined the rules for the youngest game. Took out a lot of stuff they didn't need to bother with for a faster game more than anything. But we haven't had a lot of deaths. We actually we did a Halloween one, and we had two characters die in that. They got ate by the Great Pumpkin. Actually,
Oh,
they I'm doing this one up. Hopefully, I'm going to have it on DM's Guild in a few more weeks. So I'm ready. It's a one shot in a hedge maze that's actually takes the players into It's a Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, and then they at the end of it they come to the Great Pumpkin, and Linus is finally successful at summoning the Great Pumpkin, which goes on to attack everybody. So that's good. Hopefully I'll have that out soon. I've been keeping all my writing. I do all my home brew. It's all home brew. So this one I thought was tight enough that anybody can jump into it and play the game. So I'm just getting some artwork done from some friends, and going to finalize that. Hopefully have it out by the end of August for people in DM's Guild or something else like that.
oh, that's super fun. I love that. When we did my son's first one shot,
Yeah.
I threw in some Enderman. So I kind of like
Right. I just
made
heard
it.
about Enderman. I was like, because I don't play
I don't
Minecraft.
know anything about Minecraft or Enderman, and I just know he likes it, and he's always talking about them. So I was like, all right, and Unearthed Arcana had like a super simple stat block, and I was like, I'll take it.
That'd be easy miniatures to build too. So yeah.
I'm sure they'd be the easiest. We did full on. No, I did draw. I drew a map, and it was like 2 straight lines, and I was like, this is a street in the middle of a city. Here are the things. It was his very first one, so we were like the most simple.
Well, I have a friend who has a laser cutter, so he cut my hedge maze out of XVF foam for me. I have the map, so then I had to just texturize it and color it, paint it, put on all the things. So they were actually going through the maze, but the good thing about that particular module was that I didn't give away where they were at. They finally figured it out at the end, because they passed a statue of a golden dog, or a golden bird, and a giant white platinum silver dog as they walked in. They had a really dirty kid, and Charles was the kid who was a plot hook who convinced him to come save his friends. And he's a ratty ragtag kid, the kind of kid you'd beat up and not feel sorry for. But they battled a couple of kids and other stuff to get to the middle, and then I said the kid in the middle is reading from a book, and he's got a blue tattered cloak wrapped around him, and that's when my son kind of clued in. He says, "Oh, we've been playing It's a Great Pumpkin, haven't we?" That worked out perfect. Got right to the end before they figured it out. So.
That beautiful moment when you just see the light bulb go off. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good one. So.
Do you do anything extra for the adult players to get connected to their characters?
I ask all my characters, I have a backgrounder sheet with about 10 questions that they have to fill out to give me an idea of their background. And I try and pull in as much as that into the game as possible. The more background you can pull in, the closer ties they have to the game. With the adult game, we have a monk who's left the village, left his monastery in a bad way. So I have them trying to keep occasionally he gets attacked by other monks trying to drag him back to the monastery in the middle of the night. So he got kidnapped once, and they had to go do an ocean chase to go hunt him down. Another time I had the parents of the gnome ranger. He never really gave me a background, so I said, okay, well, your parents are going to be as annoying as hell. And so they don't want him to go adventuring. He's too precious and too fragile. So he had to sneak out of town and get away from his parents to go join up with the group. So I try and pull in the as much of the character backgrounds as I'm given and tie it into the overall big story. It's kind of an in-between noise between the big story. They're pretty tied into their character and what they want and what they want to do. So the younger kids don't have as complex of backgrounds. The youngest ones are just there to play and have fun, and they're pretty limited in what they think the character is all about. The mid-range, I ask for a little bit of a background, get them to fill it out. But as their capabilities grow, I want more from them so I can do more for them.
I think it's really cool that they will get to grow with that, with D&D. I've gotten to talk a lot about how I think D&D really helps make people better human beings in general. And I think learning that at a fundamental age with kids, to learn those, the problem solving skills and the teamwork and
the imagination they have to pull out and work. They have to come up with solutions.
They have to learn social skills to be able to talk to NPCs.
Right, and just to talk to each other, they got to be nice, and they got to learn how to be nice and polite. And everybody's got ideas at the table, and I want to hear them. So they have to take turns and learn that. So yeah, it's been good with the kids playing. We've had our challenges. Sibling rivalry kind of rears its ugly once in a while. So but we get through it. So I hate switching from the DM hat to the dad hat occasionally, but got to do what you got to do. And
yeah, especially at that age, you still have to have a little bit of that, like, hey. But I really enjoyed being able to change that hat from from mom to DM and run that game. And I mean, obviously you're still their parent, like it's, but to have kind of like that different role, like this is a story that we're going to build together. I thought it was really fast. I loved it. It was so much fun.
Yeah, you can just see their, well, as my brother put it, it says everybody's a kid when they come to a D&D table. He says, there's no difference. Yeah, he says, I'm like 12 years old when I come play D&D. And he's like 55. So.
I had the pleasure of interviewing two DMs from the Netherlands, Dirk and Freya, and they said, especially with kids, what's a really fun D&D exercise to do is to take a game and tell them, okay, there's going to be lots of puzzles and problems to solve here, but you're not allowed to solve any of them. You have to ask for help from somebody else. So like, say, somebody else is better at sneaking and you need to get out the window, you have to ask somebody for help. And then that eventually that's going to come around and they're going to ask you for help. So it teaches that whole, finding people's strengths and that communication. And I'm really looking forward to running that exercise.
Yeah, you got to have something with the kid game, something for each of them to do each game. So they feel as part of the game and a little bit special on their own, right, with the character accomplishing something. The sneaking around is great. The puzzle finding, the occasional thumping of monsters. They like being able to, like everybody else, they want to do something that they can't do in real life. They want to, boom, flash something around. And so if you give the kids an opportunity to do that, they're in. They buy in so fast. I've also DM'd a couple one-shot games, getting people introducing into the game, and I did one with daddies and daughters. But they were players in my game, and I have a room at my table for one more player each game, so we try and get one person in that hasn't played before, or somebody and to play an NPC. So they wanted to play a game with their daughters, so they came in, and there were 6 around the table playing a daddy-daughter game. And my daughter sat in as well, so it's one of the biggest games I hosted. There was 8 of us. But that was really fun. I really enjoyed that. They built characters, and they were all new to the game, and threw a 2-hour problem at them. it was a good way for them to just connect with their daughters too. Their daughters were 18, 20, very creative people, but this was something they do. And they went on to actually run their own campaign and their own game. So that was nice. The same people are playing the game. So they get together once a month to have a daddy-daughter game. So I was like, oh, that's so cute. I started that. That's so nice.
Oh, that's really awesome. I love that. I love that idea of doing like a father-daughter kind of bonding game.
Yeah, it's not. That's the youngest game. The two dads in it are in my adult game as well, and but they still love playing with the kids because it's such a different vibe for them. It's ridiculous, silly, and so much fun. Whereas in the adult game, that's when they put the serious cap on and got to work and get stuff done. So
I love that in games. I like a good balance. I do like a good balance between silly and heavy, but I do love that heavy. I love the intense RP. I'm a huge fan of the heavy RP, but I like a good like silly now and then too.
yeah, well, people will have fun. They'll
Yeah.
laugh at everything, but yeah, it's nice in the having both games going because if I get a crazy silly idea, I'll throw it at the kids. And with the adult ones, that's if I like we did a zombie invasion into that Kelp temple,
Mm-hmm.
and wasn't long before they realized it wasn't. Oh, we'll just kill a few of them. They had to run, and I cranked up the music. I changed the lights to red that are underneath my table, and it got pretty intense because I pulled out like literal horde of miniatures and threw it all into the room. They were chasing them, and they had to keep backtracking to get away. So it got very intense. They were and there wasn't much combat because they were trying to slow down the horde back up to get out where they could escape. So it was, but they said that was one of the most intense sessions we've had. So that's not something I would throw at the kids though, because it'd be a little. I don't think it'd be scary, but I don't think it would be in their wheelhouse for. I don't know. Kids nowadays probably zombie invasion, no big deal. Whatever, Dad. Come on.
Whatever, Dad.
I'm gonna the next game with the kids. I'm also gonna pull something from Doctor Who, and have animated snowmen. I've been building those, so they're gonna get attacked by snowmen and do the monsters are always funner with the kids because I get to like they're little. They're still like the full combat stats and everything else.
Yeah.
And they beat the monsters, but they're not going up against demons or the Jinn or something else. They're going up against wacky stuff. So yeah, it's Doctor Who's big influence. You asked earlier, so there's lots of good episodes you can pull complete storylines from that kind of stuff.
I've heard a lot of DMs say that they pull from Doctor Who.
Yeah.
I like to, that's going to be one of those things the internet's going to hate me for. I'm not a Doctor Who fan. I know.
Interview's over. Interview is done.
I'm told that it's because of where I started. Like, so the way my brain works, you just start at the beginning. Like that's the same thing everybody says every time.
You can't do that with Doctor Who. It's all wibbly wobbly. It's all over the place.
I remember watching it going, what in the world do you guys have me watching? And then everybody was like, no, you're not supposed to start there, Natalie. You should start later. Blah, blah. But that kind of breaks my brain. But also the fact that there are questions, like they give you so many questions and there are no answers to the questions.
Well, with my D&D campaigns, I don't go quite that far. I haven't done too much time.
Right. Yeah. In campaigns for sure. So if you could go back to when you first started DMing,
yeah,
what piece of advice would you give yourself?
Oh man, that was a 12-year-old kid in northern Manitoba. That was yeah. The thing back then, the resources were so limited that like there was a small bookstore that would occasionally get stuff in. The nearest city was 6 hours away. So we did mail order stuff to get in. We all shared resources. And our biggest advice then, we had so much fun. You know what? Like back then we're just kids having fun with a new game. Like, I
Mhm.
don't have any advice for those kids. That was good times. I would have said save the books. I didn't do that as much when I grew up. I had to cut out stuff and save those modules I had, but you just put them away, give them to mom to keep. She'll keep them for you for decades. That's pretty cool. But
Oh.
I didn't even have my dice when I started playing again, so that was sad because I got into magic and other things, and as moved, I kind of lost all my stuff. So yeah, but hang on to all that stuff. Keep it in a box somewhere. You know?
Do you have a, this is like my whole, I won't be able to see it in the podcast, but I have like a whole D&D shelf with, yep.
Well, I have a small office in the basement that has become my instead of my home office, it's now become the Imaginarium, I call it, where that's where the builds and the writing and the painting happen. Yeah, so it's kind of taken over that entire small room. So, and I do have to purge to get rid of a lot of stuff. It's like, oh, I know I'm gonna miss some of the stuff, but the big sets I build for the big rooms,
Mhm.
those aren't reusable, so I do pitch those. Like they're not
Oh,
big
does that just
lava.
break your heart though when you have to throw it?
Yeah, it kind of does. But I take pictures and I put it on the blog, and I write up every adventure that we do on the blog. It's a good thing actually. It's a good tip. Is I started putting together a blog just to keep track of the game notes from the previous time instead of writing them down or trying to remember them. I put a blog notes together. So I built a pretty good website of all my homebrew uh, items and the world, the cities, the towns people have been to. All my games take place in this world. So when a new town comes up, it's now accessible to all the players to wander through. And so I added to the big map that's on the website on Dragontime.ca. So I go in there and I'll add my homebrew items, any monsters I come up with, get added to it. So it's become, I tell the characters that they have to, or my players that they have to go look before the game, go read it so you remember what happened coming into the new game. And I've started asking the players to do the recap of last time's game instead of me having to do it. And that's one thing off my plate. So I get them to do it. So they have to, sometimes it's, yeah, my character did something awesome. The rest of you guys sucked. Okay, let's start playing. It's like, no, you got to do more than that. But
Oh,
it
that's
gets,
interesting having them do the recap.
yeah, because that's one thing off the DM's plate. The more you can get off the DM's plate, the better. So they got enough to handle. So if the player can take over telling what happened last time, perfect.
Yeah, that's smart. That's smart. I don't think any of my players take notes.
Ah,
So that would they're yet to learn that lesson.
yes. Yeah, my guys take furious notes because I put so many red herrings and plot hooks into the big, thing, leading up to the big reveal that they have to keep notes, so otherwise they can easily die.
I'm learning. I'm getting better about taking notes. When I started realizing, like, oh, okay, I was there's so much to juggle at the same time as a DM,
Yeah.
and so I was like, I need to do all of these things and take notes. But I'm getting much. I'm finding like a little shorthand that works for me, or I take my notes at. Then I kind of like go back through them at the end of the session
Okay.
when everybody leaves, and I'm like, okay, let's go back through all of this.
Yeah, I write it up the next day or day after, best I can recall. Yeah, I'm fried by the end of a DMing session. I've got you've got, like you said, you have to juggle so much in your brain, come up with solutions and new characters on the fly, and by the end of the night, I'm like, oh, I'm exhausted. Can't sleep because everything's just so wired. But yeah, it's yeah. So if you can, that's a good. I'll pass that on to people. Is I've had good success. Make the other players do the recap of what happened, and it's because it's not up to the DM to remember every little thing that happened. That should be a player thing. Why not?
Yeah,
They're the ones who like experienced it. And it's kind of fun hearing it from their point of view too. So
of what went on. That
yeah.
I think that would be really a lot more fun. And I've told them, like, I'm really easy on them right now because most of them, it's their very first campaign. They've never even played D&D before.
Okay.
So I told them, like, I was going to start off really easy, and then throughout time, like, you know, it would become more and more. So that would be like an interesting so like for our combat, because we have a pretty big party, when we first started the campaign, our party, we had an 8-person party.
Okay.
And so I, like, at the beginning, they were all still learning. So at that time I gave them, like, you know, I let them work out their turn in combat. The combat took forever because there's 8 people in there.
That's 8 people, yeah. You get, especially with new players, because it'll come to their turn and then they'll figure out what's going on.
Yes.
And then have to look up everything, the spells and that. So I always remind the players, like, figure out what you're going to do before it gets to your turn, or at least have some ideas.
Mm-hmm.
That makes it go much faster. And if a new player, and if they're, make them come up with a spell book, like photocopy the book and with the spells on it, and like have the spells right in front of them as part of their character sheet, the ones they have. You can get the spell cards or write it out somehow.
Mm-hmm.
But the spells you have, don't spend time flipping through the player's handbook during combat trying to figure out if it's a ranged spell attack or if it's an area effect. Like, you should have that as a player. You should have that ready. But as a DM, you got to let the new players know that, because they just think it's their turn. Now I get like 20 minutes to figure out what I'm doing. It's like, no, everybody else is sitting around board while you're picking out a weapon to use. Let's
yeah. Now we've adjusted.
Yeah.
We've transitioned now that it's been enough time. They get 1 minute at the beginning of each round of combat to discuss amongst each other what they want to do.
Yeah.
And then it's their turn, and they have to, like, by that time, like, you have everybody in front of you to decide what you want to do. You've got all that time, so you can do. And then I just give them that 1 minute at the beginning, at the top of the round in each combat round, so they can discuss.
That's good. Yeah. And then discuss it at the top of the round, do the activities, actions all throughout, come back, discuss, go through. Yeah. Don't discuss it mid initiative or mid attack order to figure out what you're doing. Have that ready to go when it comes through.
It helps it flow a little bit easier, I feel like.
Yeah, especially with 8 players and a lot of them new, you need to, every tip you can get to move the game along a bit faster is
yeah. Well, now we're down to 6 players, 2 people, you know, we're all adults. Things happen. So we're down to 6 players now, but it still is. I am noticing there's a really big, like, 8 and 6, that's only 2 people, but there's a really big difference when you have 2 less people in a campaign.
Yeah, it is. And in today's world, I find that people have a little bit shorter attention span. Like, before, we'd sit in the basement for 8 hours, do nothing but play D&D when I was like 12 years old. Mm-hmm. That's all. And I would joke around, whatever. But now, like, people are used to checking their phones so much, and it's a little bit harder. That's why you got to keep the combat moving so everybody gets their turn a little quicker to get everybody interested in what's going on. If you dawdle too much on 1 or 2 players, by the time you get around to the bottom, they might be on their phones already looking up spells or checking Twitter or doing something else. Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit tougher as a DM to try and keep everybody engaged. That's what the difference between that's a big difference from what I used to play to now, to keep their attention span. But that's a DM problem, though. It's not a player problem. It's universal amongst everybody. So if you have players on phones and checking stuff, there's something that's not happening that's keeping them in the game. It could be the player. You might have to decide to, like, speak to them or anything. But I found it's more like, okay, I need to engage that player in a different way to keep them involved in the game and helping out with people. So I'll talk to them a little bit more, mention their name, just to snap them back into the game more often if I notice that happening. And so it's because with a lot of players have their characters on computers. Mm-hmm. So the computer's sitting in front of them or their tablets. And so it's not their turn. They might flip a tab and go look at something else or look at the different things, but then it comes to their turn and they're not ready to go. That's a DM problem. That's not a player problem. You got to let the people know, okay, be ready when it's your turn. Like, All right, we're coming up to you next. Okay, have your spells picked or whatever. And just little prompts like that will keep people in the game, and then they'll keep interested in it. Also, if you just describe combat a lot, Matt Mercer style, and do a lot of explosions and hand waving, it keeps people focused a little better.
I try really hard to describe combat. That part's really I struggle with that one personally. I struggle with describing combat. But I do agree with that. I do my best. I'm still really new to D&D, so I'm trying to be patient with myself on that.
Yeah,
but,
it's a skill. It'll come, and what you could do. Whenever I listening to podcasts of games and people talk about combat, I write down like the really good descriptions they have of combat, like when they kill monsters or something. I'll write those down and have those as my cheat sheet notes. And so when somebody kills a creature, I've got like about 4 or 5 things in my head as a way to describe it. So that helps. So tell people to don't just listen to the podcasts of gaming out there. Take some notes and what they're doing good and what you like, and write it down. Have that ready to go for your game. Don't be afraid to pillage ideas from other people's games too that you hear online.
Yeah, agreed on that.
Don't take the whole campaign because somebody's going to listen to it. But if somebody's got an interesting shopkeeper that you like, fire it into your game, give it a different name, and away you go. You don't have to create everything from scratch nowadays. There's so much resources out there. You need 20 different traps for dungeons. Well, here's 5,000 to pick from. Like you might, if you're building a lot, you're going to find that having to create everything from scratch every time is going to be frustrating because you're going to run out of ideas. Well, you might not, I don't know, but I run out of ideas, so I have to look for inspiration from all kinds of different things, pull it in and make it your own. And that's what art storytelling is. It's not original. To be truly original means you're just nobody's figured out where you got your inspirations from.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that's what it's there for. Like in D&D, there's no reason that you can't help someone and they can't help you.
Yeah.
You take things where you can.
Yeah, like yourself with Curse of Strahd, that I'd say that's just a starting point for what you can build into that adventure. Because everything's like PDF, and if they're determined enough, they can find out and read the whole adventure if they want to. That's why I just draw from those books versus running the campaign entirely.
Yeah, well, so Curse of Strahd is my very first campaign.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a pretty cool campaign too.
I probably should have started with one that was like level 1 to 3, not level 1 to 13.
Yeah, I think it's it's a long one.
It's a long one, and that's okay. Like, it's fine. I'm really enjoying it, and I'm learning how to twist it and make it my own. So that way it's not, I'm not doing somebody else's book. Like, I'm taking their stuff and I'm making it my own. Yeah. Which I think is really what they would want us to do anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. It's merely a suggestion to the story you want to tell.
Absolutely.
If this room doesn't make sense, or you don't like it, or you don't like the stuff in it, you don't need that room.
And there are so many resources online that I listen to quite a few of them on YouTube where they take, one guy takes Curse of Strahd and he mods it and he changes it and he makes it a little different. And I think I use almost all of his recommendations.
Well, growing up, there were so many role-playing games were just coming out. D&D was a big one, of course, but they had TSR released a bunch of other games too. And we had a really good DM who took Gamma World stuff, which is a post-apocalyptic game, and brought the our D&D characters into his campaign in Gamma World. So, and then back and forth for a while. So it was very clever, things like that. So, and that wasn't written in any module. No, you just mashed it together and see what works. And sometimes it does. Sometimes you have stuff you remember forever. Other times you don't. So, yeah.
So the last little bit of questions is less about Rod the DM and more about the person, but if they bleed together, it's all fine. If you could recommend a movie, a book, and a TV series.
Oh, um, I'm a big fan of all the Quentin Tarantino movies,
Okay.
all the way back to Reservoir Dogs. Yeah, that's one of my favorites. Uh, the books, I tend towards English fantasy and sci-fi. Also, like Tim Powers is great for tying stories together. He's out of San Diego, I believe, Tim Powers, but he wrote Annabeth Gates and Drawing of the Dark, which was the inspiration for one of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. He's great.
Okay.
But like Dirk Gently is huge. And Red Dwarf. The nice thing is the stories you're telling you can draw the plots and the subplots from any genre and pull it into the D&D fantasy world. You don't have to read fantasy to get good ideas for D&D.
Mm-hmm.
If you got people being trapped and chased in a antique space freighter in Doctor Who, bring that into your story as an antique broken up ship or palace, and follow the plot lines in the episodes. Terry Pratchett should be given a gold medal for inspiration for his work with the Discworld series. And then also the Myth Adventures. Awesome storylines there, and pieces you can pull from that series of books too.
Okay. And that was all three, yeah?
I think movies, books. What was the last one?
TV series.
Oh, we kind of covered that. There's so much out there right now.
Oh man, yes.
Yeah. It's a geek's paradise right now for media, for movies. It's so much fun. Yeah. Unbelievable what's out there, and you can watch it when you're. And I can't believe as a kid that like all these things that we used to read in books and comic books are now on the screens, big screens, and yeah, there's tons of adventures.
So many, and with all of these, like comic book series are becoming movies and TV series. Yeah. It really is like nerddom paradise right now, and D&D being as huge as it is right now.
Yeah, this is a golden age to be a nerd, and we're getting everything we ever asked for.
Yeah, they're dominating the box offices, the books, the games. Yeah, everything is. Okay, last question. It's the most important. Dirty Dancing or Footloose?
That's like if I had to, if like somebody was holding a crossbow to my head, which one would I watch? I'd go with Footloose.
Footloose? Yeah. Any particular reason, or it's just you had to choose?
No reason. That's so random. I wasn't ready for that one.
Yeah, we like to keep it random at best. Yeah. Now, remind me what is your blog one more time?
Dragontime.ca.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here.
No problem. Thank you for having me. This is great.
This is fantastic.
Yeah. Okay. Well done.
And don't forget, Nat 1s are just as fun as Nat 20s.